All right. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Serious Angler podcast brought to you by our friends over at X2 Power. As always, yeah,
I got
up there. There you
the
go.
backhands, yeah. Like we can just gun show, right? Yeah.
Dude, that's always the hardest thing. But folks, as always, I'm your host, Bailey Egbert, and joined with me is the captain, Mr. Andy Full. What's going on, buddy?
Oh, just another day in Buffalo. Just actually had the day off today.
It's like jail.
It kind of is, right? Like
It's
either too calm on Lake Erie or there's 6-footers. There's like no in between where we're at on the lake. So like I moved a guide trip from today to, I don't know when we'll reschedule it, but like the forecast was 1 to 3s building to 4 to 6s. And I'm like, yeah, we don't want to be out in that. So like right around 2:00 it shifted, I guess, and got real big, and probably could have got the guide trip in, but safety before money is the way I look at it. I'd rather be safe than sorry. So
yeah. I mean, you could get your $500 for the day, and everyone else is swimming to shore.
Yeah, exactly. Not worth it. I'd rather have a pleasurable experience while we're jacking giant smallies than we're all holding on for dear life in my little bass boat playing Gilligan.
Yeah. Dude, on my trip to Sturgeon Bay last week, Pete Glusick was telling me he's like, he was on Erie at one point. I think he was fishing at Costa or something. But back like 20 years ago, and they were in almost 10 footers, and he was talking about how you'd have to basically to fish, he was on his knees, him and his co-angler on their knees, like in the boat you couldn't stand because it was just that bad. He's like, yeah, I can't believe they send us out. And I'm like, I couldn't believe you went out. Like,
well, there was a Northern Open that Derek Remitz almost won out of Sandusky a few years ago. And you can find the photos from it on like Bassmaster.com if you dig hard enough. And you can see like pictures of like guys fishing near each other. And all you see is like their heads in water and smallmouth like jumping above them.
Yeah.
So like, it's like
co-anglers like raising their nets up here.
Yeah.
They're like,
like
it's like you're jellyfishing from SpongeBob where they're like running.
No thanks. I've been out there and fished in tournaments and like that. It is not fun.
No, thank you.
But they eat. I'll tell you that. They eat when it's like that.
I bet it does. Yeah, I bet. Real quick, can you hear my fan?
No.
Okay, perfect. Because it is hot as heck. I say that, but our guest today told us it's over 90 degrees where he's at, so I guess I shouldn't complain. But also a little bit of heat, and my northern self, you know me. I get a little cranky when it's hot up here. I like when we have our 50 degrees sweatshirt weather, a little bit of chop on the water. But we have a fun episode here tonight, Andy. We have a fun episode with Josh Stracner, Bassmaster Elite Series Pro. We're going to get him on here in a second, but we're going to be talking about, for folks that are wanting to go pro, we talked a little bit offline with Josh on, the importance of being versatile, not just in techniques and patterns, but like also understanding how that can change regionally. And you're going to have to learn that eventually if you want to go to the Elite Series level, but then also how he's adjusting to that Elite Series level. I mean, he got Rookie of the Year, so I say he's adjusting pretty dang good. But we're going to get him on here in a second. But we got a couple questions here really fast. We got David from Angler's Channel in the chat. Were the fish still on beds where you were at, Bailey? I think he's talking about Sturgeon Bay. And yes, they were all spawning.
And yes, they are on beds here still in some of our lakes in New York. So
that is for sure. All right. I think without further ado, Andy, we get our guest down here, Mr. Josh Stracner.
What's up, guys?
What's going on, dude?
Good evening, man. Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. It's a little warm down here where I'm at, but I'm doing all right.
You can keep it.
That. Yeah. You got that AC cranked?
High as it go.
That's probably the biggest bill for you guys in the South is just air conditioning.
Yeah, it gets pretty bad sometimes, especially with the humidity's high like it is right now. 100% humidity of air conditioning.
Good grief. I give a lot of props to like when I go south and I see either guys that are doing construction on the roads or guys that are building houses stuff, and they're like, I'm sitting there just walking from my truck to the house and I'm dying. Like, I don't know how those boys do it. Beyond me, but that is not what we're talking about tonight. We're gonna talk about bass fishing. And before we get too deep into the show, kind of tell us where you got your start in the first place? Like, where'd you get your first bass? Who got you involved in bass fishing from the start to obviously be where you're at now?
It's got to, it'll be my dad. He started carrying me fishing when I was probably 6 or 7 years old, and I think we started fishing tournaments like when I was about 10 years old, fishing team tournaments here locally on the Coosa River, mainly Logan Martin Lake. And that's where I caught my first bass is on Logan Martin Lake. And that's kind of what got me started, and I quit fishing for a while. Probably when I was in my early to late teens, I didn't fish much. I was doing a little bit of everything but fishing, but I didn't really get back into it heavily until I was probably in my mid 20s. Kind of when I started fishing, like the BFL kind of stuff. What used to be called the weekend series, and fishing some bigger team trails here locally. And that's kind of how I got my start.
So, with that break, I mean, what was it? You're chasing like a sport dream or something like that?
No, not really. I got into racing motorcycles for a while, and I don't know. I just kind of got out of fishing there for probably 5, 6, 7, or 8 years. I still fish some, but I wasn't real competitive with it. I just fun fish buddies,
Yeah.
I really it well after high school before I ever really started pursuing bigger tournament trails like the BF. I think I started fishing the BFLs in maybe 2010, and that's kind of where I started to get to where I'm at now. So,
are we talking like full blown motocross that you were into, like the Shryak boys were into?
No, I never got into the motocross. We did enduro racing.
Fun.
Crap.
We raced woods. So and we traveled around a little bit. We went to Texas one time, Arkansas, Florida, North Carolina, following these enduro type races. It was fun. It was a lot of fun. I kind of wish I could still do it, to be honest.
So did that kind of passion go into the boat world where, look out for Josh at takeoff because he's going to pass you? Or?
No, I think just being competitive. I've been competitive all my life, no matter what it is. Even if it's at work, I've always worked construction, and I've always wanted to do a little bit more, a little bit better than, everybody else that day. It's just, I guess, just the competitive blood in me that whatever I'm doing, whether it's fishing or motorcycles or whatever, I want to beat you.
Yeah. Hot foot to the floor. That's all we can say about that.
But hey, that's a good trait to have, though. I mean, like some people say there's like such a thing of over competitiveness, but I call BS on that because like the most successful people you find are the people that are like insanely competitive that they can't help it but be competitive.
Yeah, that's the way it is. And like fishing, I still like, especially when it's hot out like this right here. It's hard for me to.
Oh gosh, he's gone.
He ghosted. No, I think we're just having some technical difficulties. But
he's like, oh dang, they're talking like my past here. We gotta get out of here.
and he's back.
He's back.
Was that me?
We lost you for a second.
I don't know what happened, but
oh no, it's all good. Keep going.
But I kind of forgot what I was saying. But it's the competitive part is really what drives me. It's like when it's hot like it is here right now, and I don't have any tournaments coming up. It's just hard to go out there and just fun fish. If I had a tournament to practice for in a couple of days or something, I'd be a lot more willing to go out there and get after it and fish all day. So it's just the competitive part of it is what I like about it.
Heck yeah. Mm-hmm. So kind of, you mentioned you got back into it, late teens, probably early 20s, something like that.
Yeah, early 20s, and I think
what sparked that?
I wound up. I think when I was 22, I bought my first boat, my first bass, and it really didn't. Even then, I still just fun fished, get out there and ride around with buddies, and fish for a few hours in the afternoons, and but really, I don't know what made me do it, but I got interested in fishing the BFLs and the Bass Weekend Series, what they were called at the time. So I signed up for those, I think, in 2010, and I fished that whole season, and I really didn't do all that good. And I think the next year I fished him, I won the Angler of the Year, and that kind of gave me the motivation. It's like, man, I like to go, do this for a while, and went to some of the regionals and kind of experience, see what it was like, and I didn't even really start keeping up with Bassmasters, as far as the pro trails and everything. I was probably a couple of years into it before I even started paying attention to what's going on out there, So, and like me, I'm 38 now, and I was a rookie last year. I'm an old guy, to be just not getting into it. So these guys.
I never thought that. I always thought you were like maybe late 20s.
No, I'm far from it.
Hey, you know what they say? It's better late than never.
Yeah.
It's really not even that late. I feel like the average rookie class in bass fishing is just getting. I mean, I say that, and then there's like KJ Queen, who is like maybe 22 last year, but
yeah,
still, I mean, there's not really like a bad age, I feel like, to get into bass fishing.
No, never. Just the fields. These guys are getting younger and younger, and like I remember reading an article in Bassmasters about on average, like some of these guys, some of the bigger name pros, like it seems like they were in their prime around 40 years old, and that that was 6 or 7 years ago when I was reading that, and I think that's slowly getting younger and younger. These guys are like maybe 35 to 45 is kind of in their prime, but every year it seems like it's getting younger and younger. These guys coming out of college, fishing opens and qualifying, and they're in their mid-20s, so they got 10 more years just to travel around and practice and fish all over the country before they really technically in their prime. So
right,
the sport's changing for sure.
Did you qualify through the opens?
I did.
Do you think that's becoming harder and harder to qualify? Just seeing the level of the opens increase.
I think so. You got, I think that from what I've heard, that like this past year there was over 100 people on the waiting list to get in. So you got a full field in every tournament.
Yeah, that's tough as heck. But yeah, I can speak to minutely, but I could speak to your drive, and we could probably attribute it back to your competitiveness, because it was 2 years ago now, I think, back when you guys were on Fork. I think it was your rookie year. You guys went to Fork your rookie year, right?
Right, last year.
Yeah, so I actually remember seeing you out there, and I was there pre-practicing with Destin and Marion. I got cleared by Bass to go down there, because I was doing media for him at the time. And I remember sitting there. I remember seeing your boat. And I look over. I'm like, I see the big Reaction Innovation sticker, and I was like, "Is that Matt Heron?" Like me and Des were trying to figure out who it was, but then we're like, "Oh, that's Stracner." And it was like you, Destin. I think Takuito was there too. But I mean, you were out longer than we were every day, so I contribute that to your hard work. But my question and why I bring that up is like, is that still now? You've got Rookie of the Year, you've had some pretty good seasons here. In your first few in the Bassmaster Elite Series, has that work ethic increased, dwindled? Have you found a balance, or is that still the same way as it's been since you started?
I think it's still the same. I actually feel like I feel like I don't work hard enough sometimes. Sometimes when I'll come off the water like an hour before dark or 30 minutes before dark, and there's still boat trailers there with other elite guys.
You feel guilty.
Guilty, about not being out there, and it's just. I still try to work hard. I know I'm not the next Kevin Van Dam. I'm not the best fisherman out there, but so if I can work just a little bit harder than most of the guys, I feel like I gain that much of advantage over them.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a trait that is so hard to balance out when you talk about when you're pulling out, right, and you see other trailers there, and those guys were there either when you were putting in or before you put in. They're still there, and you feel guilty. and you're like, man, should I still be out there? But like, that's such a hard thing to balance because there is an argument to be said for taking care of yourself in practice, not just like, obviously you want to work harder than everyone else, but like at the same point in time, you still need to be mentally and physically like ready to go come tournament day. Because if you burn yourself out in practice, you're just not going to be in it come tournament day. That's
exactly
a valid
right.
argument.
It can get kind of brutal out there, and like you just said, if you're out there like the second or third day of practice, and some of these practice days are 14, 16-hour days almost. I know the first day at Pickwick, first day of practice at Pickwick, it was like 4:00 that afternoon. I had a headache. I was hot. I felt like I was already dehydrated, and like I said, it was only like 4:00, and I took out and went home. I know I was the first guy off the water, but I just felt, I could have stayed out there, but mentally I wouldn't be in it, and I felt like I'd just be wasting time. If I don't want to be out there, I'm probably gonna just take
You're just not being productive at that point.
So, but yeah, it's you got to be careful. You got to take care of yourself, like you said, and then it all comes back to clearing your mind, keeping mentally focused. That's what it's all about out there, is making the right decisions and keeping a clear head. And if you're exhausted, you're not doing yourself any good.
Yeah. So I want to backtrack really fast. This is going to come full circle. But when you decided, I want to go fish the Bassmaster Opens because this is what I want to do, right? And you look ahead, did you make any adjustments to maybe your lifestyle or how you fish or how you approach tournaments with the idea of I'm trying to be a professional bass angler?
I don't think I changed the way I fish. At least I feel like I didn't change. I actually fished the Opens like 5 or 6 years ago. I think it was 5 years ago. I fished them, and I really didn't have any business fishing them, to be honest. I really hadn't been nowhere other than around in central Alabama, and I really didn't have the money to do it. I wasn't making that much money at the time, but I wanted to try it. So that first time I tried it, I was kind of worried about the money side of it the whole time, about cashing a check, and and you can't do that out there fishing against those guys. And I didn't do any good because of all that. And I think I waited. It's probably 4 years later, 3 or 4 years later, which was 2 years ago, when I fished them again. And I told myself, I'm not going to worry about trying to cash a check. I just want to win one. And I always told myself, if I qualified, I'd like to just fish for a living for 1 year just to say I did it. I don't want to be a guy that's 50 or 60 years old and still saying to himself, I wish I'd tried it one time. I just wish I would have tried it. So that's kind of where I was. I just wanted to try it one time, and if I qualified, I did. If I didn't, I wouldn't worry about it. And I wound up qualifying. I was like, heck, I got to go for it. My family was pushing me, especially my dad. Wanting me to try it. So after last year, I finally made it. I told myself, yeah, I definitely want to do this for a long time now. So
yeah, it's awesome. And it's kind of cool though, because then you can almost say that you truly made it on your first true try. The first time you went out there, you're not mentally prepared, not mentally right.
But,
so then you come back the second time when you were probably in a better monetary position and more mentally focused, and you're like, this is my first true attempt, and you made it. Now, did you fish all three, or did you just fish the Southerns?
It was that year we fished it was kind of weird that the year I qualified, we only had 2 divisions.
Oh, that's right. The 4 tournaments, right?
Yeah.
I think they called ours the Eastern.
Yeah.
We had 4 tournaments.
I forgot about that already.
Changes. I feel like it changes every 3 years.
Yeah, every 3 to 4 years. So how did you like Oneida on that last because it was the last tournament, right? For that to qualify was Oneida that year?
No,
is that right?
Were supposed to go to Oneida. They canceled it because of COVID, the New York COVID deal. They wouldn't let us reschedule it to Lay Lake, which is like 20 minutes down the road from my house.
Oh, that's right. Is that the one Keith Carson won?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. And that was actually I knew when they rescheduled that to Lake, I told myself right then, I was like, that's going to be my worst tournament of the year, right? Just because it's my home lake.
Yeah,
and I was right. That was my worst tournament, but I still made it. I think I come in 35th or 40th.
yeah.
So good for an open, dude.
It was good. I think I went coming in second in the points. Patrick Walters beat me by like 5 points. I finished second, and I think Justin Hamner, he qualified there. I think it was me, Justin. I think Robertson may have qualified there too. So that was a bunch of us that made it right there later.
Yeah, that was the year you won Cherokee.
Yep.
Yeah. Do you travel with anybody?
Yeah, I travel with Buddy Gross and Joseph Webster.
Oh, that's a good crew.
That's
a good crew.
Motley crew.
Yeah. I like both of them. Buddy's a good dude. We've had him on the show. We've been trying to get Joe on the show. I spent a week with him down in Florida fishing at Bienville. He's a good dude. I like to tease Joe a lot. I learned who the real Joe was when we were fishing and he had his active target panned forward and he had a school of fish. I was like, "What you seeing up there?" And he's like, "Oh, nothing. They're in the back." And he's just being a joker. But that's a good crew to like, especially for guys that have been in the sport for a long time and guys that do well around the country. I mean, Joe's leading Angler of the Year, or not Angler of the Year, Rookie of the Year, excuse me, right now. So that's, I mean,
yeah.
Joe's a stick around your parts, isn't he?
Yeah, he lives in North Alabama, not a couple hours from me, but they're both good guys. They're both of them's been pretty much doing it for a long time, So right. I'm always bouncing stuff off them and letting it, trying to make sure I'm doing the right thing. And so it's been good traveling with those two.
Heck yeah, that's a really good crew. Well, dude, so you qualify, right, and you make that right adjustment. You finally have accomplished your goal of getting there, but now you're at the big dance, right? And you obviously want to stay in there. You want to prove that you're not just a one and done, right? Did you make any adjustments when you got to that big league in terms of, because obviously you won Rookie of the Year, so you did something right. So what kind of adjustments, what kind of balance did you find to be consistently successful throughout your season?
I think probably the biggest change that I did was, and I did this last year, and I think I've kind of gotten away from it this year, but it's just fish the day, or just fish what's in front of me. I was afraid when I first joined the elites that I still had that mentality of like fishing 1 day tournaments, and practicing for 1 day tournaments, and practicing is a big deal. I really didn't realize it, and probably till sometime last year, about how important. But it's kind of hard to explain the way a guy goes about practicing for 3 days and trying to look and find areas or fish that to last 4 days.
Right.
A lot of the lakes, the place that we go to, they're so big. You can't look at them in 3 days. I try to look at the history, watch those videos, and see what productive areas are, and try to spend my 3 days of practice, 2.5 or 3 days, just looking at maybe 4 different areas, or even just 3 different areas. I know a couple of tournaments like last year, and one this year in particular, that I had I didn't do good in. I had some of my worst finishes. I tried to make the lake too big, if that makes sense. I was trying to look at the whole lake, and I was trying to find everything. And I'd go to the upper end of a lake. I'd start idling around. I think I'd have to find like every little thing in that area. Then I'd move, and you just can't do that. You have to spend time, with a bait in the water.
Right.
I think the way some of my best tournaments in my mind, I made the lake small. I picked out one or two areas, and really by the end of the second day of practice, I want to know exactly the area that I'm going to fish. Usually, if I don't know that by the end of the second day, it usually doesn't turn out too good. I don't know why, but if I'm having to scramble around on the last day of practice, trying to look at a brand new area. It seems like I always, wind towards the bottom of the list in the standings at the end of the tournament. So just trying not to make these places too big.
Stretch yourself out.
They're bass, right? So like the whole motive here is to try and simplify everything that we can to be able to put more fish in the boat. So when you break it down, I guess like an extension of the question here is when you break it down and you're taking little areas, are you making like a milk run? Are you more of like a soaker? Like do you sit there and really like draw the fish out and then you have all these other areas? So like take us through like your practice and then into a tournament, how you kind of break that all down. So when you walk into it,
I'm not a sitter. I usually don't like sitting on one or two places all day.
Yeah.
Or just trolling around a little smaller area. I don't like doing that, but some of my best tournaments has been done doing that. I like to move around a lot, but again, going to these lakes that I really don't know. It's not like here at home. I can run 50 or 60 brush piles, and I know exactly which ones to run at what time. Again, if I can hone in on an area of a lake, I'll spend like that last day of practice trying to find everything in that area. There's a lot of times that in a 12-hour practice day, I might spend 9 of those hours behind the wheel of my boat, just graphing and looking. So that I can kind of bump around and move around within an area, but try not to run the whole lake, like I said.
Yeah.
I like to move around, but there is times like at Lake Fork this year, it is pretty much a one spot deal, and I really didn't even find it till the second day of the tournament. But it's kind of you got to know when to slow down and milk a place, and know when to get up and move on.
Yeah.
How long do you usually give it, like on an area when it's just like either you don't think it's happening and you just pick up and go? How long do you usually give that?
It's kind of hard to say. If I started out in an area and I haven't got what I think I need by 10 o'clock, I'm usually done. I'll start moving around, jumping around, trying different stuff. Usually I try to have in my head before we even get started, what it takes to get a check, a top 50 or top 47. I'll have that. And then I'll say, what's it going to take to make a top 10? And use that. I usually just look at the history, the results of the tournaments. So I'll have that in my mind, so by the 11 o'clock on that first day, I don't have half of what I think I need to make that first cut. I'm going to start moving around. And
yeah, I don't know how guys that you hear the guys that like will sit on one particular spot for 3 hours and they're gonna go for 15 minutes, but I'm gonna sit here and wait for them to go. That thought petrifies me because it's like, what if they don't go and I'm screwed? Like it's, I don't know. I have, a lot of respect to the guys that could do that and do it consistently and do it well. I can't do that. We have a really good question here in the comments from actually a buddy of ours, Alex Coral. He's a local hammer up here in New York.
I think he's won his last 3 Empire Team Trail events that he's fished. And that's our biggest team trail tour in New York. He's insane.
Yeah. So this question,
shout out.
Yeah, this question's really good, and it goes back to your lake comment, right? Of it's your home lake. It's probably the one you're going to do the worst in. And that's what you said, and so it's kind of goes at that question or at that comment. And he said, beyond building confidence, do you feel that local events help or hurt your ability to fish on unfamiliar lakes? And then to follow up on that, do you find that you had to relearn to practice on a fresh slate?
I think you definitely need to relearn fishing your local lake. You get tied up into just fishing history. And then you got what happens is, and a lot of times you still catch fish, just fishing history. Like I did okay in the tournament, but you got these guys that don't know the lake that was in the opens, from a lot of them that was their first time there, and they look at a lake like that so much differently than I would. They keep a real open mind, and like the area that Keith Carson won, that would probably be the last place if you'd asked me where you could. I'd probably say here right there you probably will not ever win, and that's where he won it.
Always works that way.
It's weird how it works like that. Local, so sometimes local advantage helps. Sometimes it doesn't. That was actually a really tough tournament, and there wasn't a whole lot of fish caught. It was definitely a low weight tournament, but for somebody like him to look at a place, a different lake with an open mind and fishing differently, that's where it pays off.
Yeah, you definitely find that it helps some people, but then some people, like, they're absolute, kryptonite. Like, if it's a local tournament, like a local trail, they're basically going to win that or guaranteed to top 3. But then if it's like a bigger event that comes to their home lake and they got the eyes on them, you heard Lee Livesey talking about at Lake Fork, how he hated going back to Lake Fork because all the eyes on him, all that pressure and anxiety. Granted, he's just a badass and he can handle it, but there's people that crumble under that. Like it can be tough. But you made a good point though, is like you have all that history there where you've done good for so long. And then in typical fashion for the Opens or an Elite Series event, you get weather that place has never seen in 30 years. So it changes the whole place. So you're like, you question your brain why you're not catching fish in the spot that you caught fish your whole life. And then the place that you're like is garbage, that's where it gets won. It always seems to work out. You hear that story a lot, I feel like. It happens a few times a year.
I know talking to Lee after that tournament, he was saying that, the whole 3 days of practice at Lake Fork this year, he had people following him and just in practice, so
I'm sure
he didn't even look at nothing that places that he thought he was going to be able to win the tournament on. He didn't even go to them. He spent his whole practice looking at what he called junk, just stuff that he normally never fishes. And he said all that junk turned to gold. He wound up catching his fish off places he never would have thought that could have, won a tournament. So that comes back to he kept a real open mind and was fishing stuff that kind of, he thought he wasn't supposed to be fishing, and he wound up, doing good on it. So.
Yeah, when I was watching live, I think on like day 1, he was like, "Now here's a spot I haven't fished in like 6 years, but if they're here, it's going to be a big one." And I set the hook, and it was like a 6 or 7 pounder. I'm like, "Oh," he's like, "There's all kinds of them." I'm like, "Oh, geez," like that's just insane.
That home lake stuff, it can be weird. It can be good, and it can be real bad. So.
Yeah, but honestly, though, when you think about it, that was an absolute genius practice strategy because I remember him saying it. And he's like, I can't just sit around and not practice. It's an Elite Series event. It's $100,000 on the line. I need to at least be doing something, right? And when you're that prevalent on that lake, one of the biggest names, lake-wise in the country, you're obviously going to get followed. There's going to be, like you'd mentioned, there's going to be people, whether they're on the Elite Series or not, they're going to follow you. So, like, go it, because, like, if you go and you run stuff, like you mentioned, that stuff that he thinks is garbage or that he never runs or hasn't run before, the worst case scenario is you find new stuff because that your good stuff's probably going to pan out. That's a genius practice strategy.
I don't think he planned it that way, I know.
But he should.
It sure sounds good, though.
He should make himself sound way smarter than he did.
Makes him sound like a genius.
Yeah, that's what he should roll with, though. That's what I'm saying. It is, though. It really is genius. So with that, talking about, when you fish local a lot, there's guys that become really, really good locally that are like staple names you hear every single weekend, either winning or top 3. Then you get in this mindset where you're fishing the same way locally. You're not adjusting too much. When that person, say, wants to make a jump to fish the Opens or, qualifies for the Elite Series, and they're going to be going to areas, say, like, yourself going to St. Lawrence River, which you did not have a lot of experience in, prior to the Elites. Like, it's how advantageous is it to try to purposely gain experience in different regions prior to making that jump to the Elite Series or the BPT?
For me personally, I think really boils down to, and I get asked this all the time, what's your fishing strength? And I never really know what to say. I know there's certain technique, whatever you want to call it, of how I like to catch them, but I don't really have a strength. I tell people sometimes when they ask me that, just fishing offshore in general. I like fishing offshore, but I think for me, the reason I did good in the opens and having decent success here in the elites is not having a certain way I like to fish. I don't want to go to a place and say that, all right, this is how I'm going to catch them, or I'm going to catch them like this, or I'm not going to catch them at all. I like whether it's throwing a spin rod at a Ned rig or throwing a 9-inch glide bait. If they're biting it, that's my favorite way to fish. Whatever they're biting, it doesn't bother me to have 8 spinning rods out on the deck or none. So. Mm-hmm. I think, like when we went up north last year, that was my first trip up north. And I felt, it had grass, it had, rocks, and fish deep, fish shallow. So I felt right at home. It's the way I fish here. I'll bump around from shallow to deep, 3 times within a matter of 2 hours, So, it's just the way I fish, I don't really sit down on one. All right, I'm just going to throw a spinnerbait all day, and I'm either going to catch them or I'm not. I don't like that, Mm-hmm. I'll have 10 or 12 rods out on the deck, and some of it might be rigged up to fish 20 feet of water, and the other side of the deck is all for less than 2 feet of water. And I'll do it back and forth all day during the tournament,
Yeah.
So whatever I feel like I can get a groove or get some momentum going, whether it's shallow or deep, I'll just run it all, until I feel good about something.
Now let me ask you this one in like particulars. When it comes to shallow and deep, what is like the first rod you pick up when you're in shallow water and the first rod you'll grab when you go deep? Because everybody has those 2 confidence things. If you don't mind sharing, what would that be for you?
We're gonna have a couple of bait questions here because Alex has another good one in the chat.
Again, that's so hard. It's like asking, what's my strength again?
Yeah. Well, it's not really a strength. It's just like you bend over. What is that first rod and reel that you gravitate to grab? Like you pull up into a shallow bank, you have maybe like some willow grass or the Alabama grass right down there in Alabama, and you're like, oh, I'm gonna catch them on this. Like you grab it and you go, not even thinking.
Well, yeah, we're gonna lie detector test you as well, just in case.
It's definitely going to be a swim jig. Everybody thinks just because I'm from Alabama that all we do is swim a jig. I told a buddy the other day that if I had to rely on catching fish on a swim jig for the rest of my life, I'd probably never weigh in a limit. I never got into the whole jig swimming thing. I'll do it sometimes, but my first thing that I pick up if I'm fishing shallow is going to be a chatterbait. 100%. And that's I'll throw it out deep sometimes too. Throw it over brush piles, but probably my best confidence chatterbait up shallow. Out deep, it's probably going to be it's hard. Some kind of swim bait. Some whether it's on a jig head or
like a big hollow belly. We're talking like a small little paddle tail.
No, like a 5-inch swim bait.
Okay. I dig that. Yeah, you're talking up my alley right now.
Or you could take that heavy chatterbait and throw the 5-inch swim bait on. Now you got double whammy.
Like I said, on a lot of fish out deep on chatterbait.
I love me.
Bailey's like melting on the inside right now. Like, stop.
Stop talking. No, I'm just kidding. But there's a really good question here from Alex Coral, and it's gonna kind of dig deeper into the question Andy asked. But he mentioned, are there any particular baits that have become staples for you after fishing the opens? Did these baits change from before you fished the opens? So like, I think what he's trying to get at is like in the opens when you're chasing consistency to qualify. Was there some things that were on your deck more often than others?
I'd probably say, and I think a lot of people would probably say this too, but a drop shot. I bet before I fished the opens, I could count on my hands and toes how many fish I ever caught on a drop shot in my life. And now, especially last year and this year, I keep a drop shot tied on all the time.
Yeah,
all the time. And that's I hear you hear guys and different pros talk about the same thing about just pick up a drop shot or a shaky head or whatever. And I swear, seems like everywhere I go, I wind up with some kind of a spinning rod or a wacky. I think that bag is probably going to be a wacky rig. Seems like every tournament we've been to this year, I can ride up and down the lake, and just about every angler I see is holding a spinning rod with a dang wacky rig on it.
I don't
That's
know
like the
why,
one
but that
bait.
dang thing just always gets bit. No matter what's going on, no matter what pressure, they eat the dang 5-inch stick bait. It
It's the
drives
one,
me nuts.
dude. It's the one bait that like is the most popular that fish don't get like used to seeing.
Yeah, let's throw it on there. It's the great equalizer, all right? Because anybody can catch a fish on a 5-inch stick bait.
It's like Rick Clunn's saying about current, right? Current's a negating factor. Well, a wacky rig is your negating factor as well.
Yeah. I take back what I said about the drop. Probably definitely going to be a wacky rig Senko. And I tell you what, just Nico rig, sticking a nail weight in it. Everywhere we've ever been, last year and this year, I have caught fish on a Nico rig stick bait everywhere, and weighed a lot of fish in doing it.
Okay, so this is one I'm really playing around with heavy because I love throwing a Nico. Like the past 2 years, I've been throwing a heavy. What's your setup for a Nico? Like rod, reel, line, hook, the whole shebang.
I like a set. I've always been a 7-foot rod length guy on a spinning reel or spinning rod, but I'm using a 7-foot. This is the Lew's Signature Series. I call it just the all-purpose 7-foot rod. The 300 size Lew's Hyper Mag reel.
Okay.
I always throw 12-pound braided line. I've got all kinds of different brands, but 12-pound braided line to either 8 or 10-pound fluorocarbon leader. My favorite hook, and I was using this hook before I even went pro, is that owner sniper Nico hook, the weedless sniper hook. Usually a 1 or 2 aught. I actually throw a little bit bigger hook than most people do, I think. But I even use, like I had a Lake Fork, I was using the 3 aught weedless sniper hook. And any 5-inch stick bait you can think of, it don't matter. Just put a nail weight in the end of it and start throwing it.
I know you're a Strike King guy. Do you throw the Ocho much?
I do.
Nico?
Yep.
It's got to probably have an interesting wobble with it being like that little octagon shape.
I don't know if the octagon shape makes much of a difference or not. I like the Ocho, especially a weighted Ocho, just because the plastic's a little bit tougher than like a Yamamoto. But I mean,
1.5 fish.
Every 5-inch stick bait, when it gets bit, Texas rig is done after 1 fish. Usually, like you don't have to lie about it; it just happens.
Yeah.
It comes up and it's like wacky rigged on your hook, and you're like, "How the hell did this happen?" There's no way around it. They all tear. I don't care how much salt or stability stuff you can throw in it; they're all gonna tear.
I can see that Ocho being more durable, though.
It's a good bait, Bailey.
The Ocho's a little bit more durable. Sure.
Dude, I'm so happy you said that owner's sniper finesse hook because that is my favorite dang hook now.
That's such a good hook.
It's good. It's not some of these Nico hooks they're just super light wire and especially catching big smallmouth, make those hard runs right at the boat. And I'm not like a reel up and pull into them guy. I kind of reel up and set the hook on them. I don't really finesse them a whole lot. So that sniper hook's a little bit thicker diameter than most of your finesse hooks. That's one reason I like it. As long as it's sharp, it's going to penetrate just as good as a light wire or anything. So.
Oh, that owner sniper finesse will make your hands bleed when you're rigging up. That thing is so dang sharp. But it's funny you say that about you hitting them with a spinning rod. One thing I've noticed is like if you're from the north, we like to ease into our fish a little bit, but like you boys from the south, I don't care if it's 8 pound test, you crack them suckers. And I'm like, I'm sitting there and you're not breaking off, and I'm like, huh, maybe I don't need to be that easy on these fish. Kind of opens your eyes a little bit.
Yeah. I'm not a real enough on them kind of guy. I like setting the hook. It's fun.
Yeah, until you're the St. Lawrence River with like 6 pound fluorocarbon, then you might regret swinging on them. Yeah. Not to dive too deep into St. Lawrence River, because I know I don't want to get anybody in trouble here, but I feel like you guys from your area, with that you guys have the TVA so close to you, adjust well to St. Lawrence River. Just from one, a graphing standpoint, but two, also just how to approach moving water.
Yeah, I also get that a lot too. Everybody thinks I'm a TVA guru. I never hardly even fished the TVA until matter of fact, last year when we went to Pickwick was my very first time to Pickwick.
Holy crap!
I've always kind of stayed like from Birmingham south.
So like a Jordan River type guy, Alabama River,
Lake Martin, I spent a lot of time on Lake Eufaula. Okay. But I think, just this area, central Alabama, North Alabama, you got so much diversity on these lakes. You got Smith Lake, these super deep, super clear water lakes, spotted bass. Then you got the TVA, which is a whole different animal. The Coosa Rivers, all these lakes are just so different. And to be able to compete in these team trails that go to all of them, you got to be pretty keen on being diversified, and it's just, I think that's the biggest thing, the biggest reason you see so many guys from maybe from the Southeast go pro, just because you got so much diversity down here. These guys grow up, as kids fishing all these different lakes, and that means a lot.
I think what's pretty crazy, and I think what helps you guys, and I've only speaking from limited experience, but also seeing the terms you guys fish in the crazy weather. But like anytime you guys get somewhat of a heavy rain, I feel like it screws up the entire fishery and changes things up, throws you guys curveballs. Like, is that just something that's natural for you guys growing up down there? Like a Eufaula, like I was there one day and it had a monster storm and it like changed the entire lake.
Lake Eufaula is the muddiest water I've ever seen in my life, and it can happen within a 24-hour period. But these, especially on the Coosa River, it can change. Last year at Neely Henry, I don't know if y'all remember or not, that
oh yeah,
they canceled the first day. Might have canceled the second day, like they did at Pickwick. But water was normal, kind of decently clean, which is clean on the Coosa River is kind of still dirty. But everything was normal, and 48 hours later, it was 4 or 5 foot flooded out of the banks and just rolling chocolate milk. And of course, we didn't get to practice, none of that. So the first day of the tournament, it was just like we're on a brand new lake. Everything changed, and that happened a lot last year. It happened at Pickwick. I think they canceled the first 2 days at Pickwick.
God, yeah.
And
it was like the great weather year last year. Like every event was like a deluge of rain or something.
It was crazy. Last year was crazy. Almost every tournament had some kind of major weather phenomenon. Just whether it just dropped off freezing cold or flood or something. But it was crazy.
Didn't Pickwick rise like 10 feet?
What's that?
Didn't Pickwick rise like 8 or 10 feet?
6. It come up 6 feet in like 24 hours.
And then I think Fort Loudon, Knoxville, it snowed one day.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like
74 degrees.
All practice.
All of practice. And I think the first day of the tournament, it was sleeting and snowing.
Good grief.
It's crazy.
I remember. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I think all we have to do is just show up somewhere and pretty much expect something crazy to happen.
Yeah, they get consistent weather for 3 months until you guys show up, and then all hell breaks loose.
Yeah.
But no, when we were talking about Neely Henry, I remember Wes Logan saying how he would have to watch the different water levels because, like, sometimes the southern end would be higher than the northern end, and that would mean some of his grass is submerged, and he could only catch them on exposed grass. Like, I remember him saying something along the lines of that. I remember that being the craziest thing, and being like, "We have it so good up in the north because our water does not change."
Yeah, Neely was crazy, and as go back to what we were talking about earlier, you know, that home field advantage played right in his hands on that
Right.
tournament.
Yeah.
He grew up on that lake, and he knew exactly what to do when that happened. You know,
He's like, I've seen this 107 times. Like,
first time there when it flooded like that. But that
That's
lake
crazy.
is weird. There's a choke down area about halfway down the lake. The lake gets real narrow. So when a flood happens, the upper side of the lake will be like 3 feet out of the banks, and down on the lower end of the lake, down by the dam, it'd be 3 foot low. So
That's insane.
It's pretty crazy.
Driving
Now what-
downhill, going down the lake.
yeah, I was gonna say, like, when you get to that choke point, does it get like white watery, like rapid, like
No,
as you're dropped, like descending that 3 foot? Like, how does that, like,
It just
mechanics of water work?
it gets real strong. The current gets real
Ah.
strong. They actually call it Minnesota Bends. It's a real narrow place, and it makes a turn and a big bluff, but it just chokes down right there. And they're on the lower end of the dam. They're pulling so much water that they'll actually suck the water out of the lower end. Where it'd be like you see bare banks where it used to be water. They'll be sucking it so hard down there it'd be low, and then on the upper end it'd be flooded up in people's yards.
Holy crap. Whew, that's crazy. Good grief. I mean, so you probably get excited then to go north just so you don't have to deal with all that. You're like, oh, if it's going to rain, then nothing's going to happen.
I like clear water up there. I've always liked clear water. You know, most guys down here, especially in the springtime, everybody, they go find the dirtiest water that they can find. And that's usually, typically the way to do it, And I'm almost the opposite. I always like trying to find the clearest water I can find. I like clear water, so I think that's why I like it up north a lot. I fell in love with it, when I went to Champlain. Like I said earlier, you can go fish grass, you can go fish boulders in 30 feet of water, and you can just do everything, you just bump around. So I really like that.
I do have a Champlain question for you. Coming from the south and fishing Champlain, what was the fishing difference like from the sheer fish numbers, like count numbers wise? Your first day of practice, like you're like, oh gosh, this is so easy. Why am I getting bit so much that I stopped catching them? Like, is that what happened to you?
It is. It's a different world. Y'all got so made up there. I wish I could find a place to live up there for like 4 months out of the year, but in the wintertime, I'm out. I'm not doing the ice fishing in the snow, and I'd rather be back down here. But yeah, definitely my very first time up to Champlain last year. By the end of the day, on that first day, I was like, "This is paradise." You catch fish where you can literally go catch a fish that you can see swimming down the bank. Then the very next place, you can go drop a drop shot on a boater in 30 feet. And it's just so easy.
Yeah, it's an interesting place because like there's fish absolutely everywhere on that lake, but you can be around fish everywhere, but you're not on like good fish.
Yeah, 3-pounders are not good fish. I think.
Was there like 17 pounds missed the cut last year?
Yeah, I had 10 both days, and I missed the cut.
Oh
you're
my
like
God.
You're like 16 a day back home right now. It would give me like 14th or the top 10.
I was talking to somebody the other day about north, and I was like, even if you have a bad tournament, you always have fun fishing.
Yeah, you always catch them.
Like, this is a great time.
When I left Champlain, I was still almost kind of fired up, even though I didn't even get a check. I was like, man, that was fun.
Can I go back out?
You're like, if I didn't make the cut, can I just stay out for the rest of the evening? Can I just keep fishing? Yeah, no, the north is, yeah, we could talk about the north for hours. But dude, what's How do you feel about going to Hawaii this year?
Man, I haven't even thought about it much. I wish I could have. There's a lot of guys when we got done with St. Lawrence last year. There was probably a dozen or so guys that went straight over there and pre-practice. I didn't get. I actually had to go down to ICAST and do that deal, but I haven't watched any of the videos. I haven't even looked at a map of the lake yet. So all I've heard is this smallmouth, and that's it. So
that'll be an interesting one, just because that place is so. I mean, you talking about spreading yourself out, like because of the lakes you go are so big. That is one that'd probably be pretty easy to do that.
Yeah, it looked pretty big.
Yeah.
What I looked. I'm actually not too worried about it. I'm more worried about probably lacrosse than anything.
Why's that?
I don't know. It just seems like it's real. Just a lot of different little bodies of water, little cuts and canals and
minefields with stumps were unmarked.
That about everybody getting stuck up there on sandbars and not making weigh-ins, and I just don't. I've never liked places like that, but
yeah, very intriguing. Well, dude, we're pumped to watch you for the rest of the season. Are you going to be at ICAST again this year?
I more than likely, yeah.
Okay, I'll give you a shout because I'll be there. We'll have to get a drink during happy hour when they have it one of those days. But I'll come by and find you.
I'll be there.
All right. Well, dude, for real, we're excited to watch you and cheer you on through the rest of this season, and hope you are as psyched to leave these northern fisheries as you were. You said you were for Champlain, and hopefully it turns out this time you actually are psyched to leave, and have a check with you this time.
I think we'll be okay.
Heck yeah. But dude, for real, thanks for taking the time out tonight to join us. It's good to get you on here, and hopefully we'll get you back on here again here soon.
Let's do it. I appreciate y'all.
Yeah, thanks,
Heck
Josh.
Yeah. All right, Josh. Night. We'll be in touch. Oh man, you know what we forgot?
What?
We forgot 3 to dinner.
Oh, bring him back in real fast. Oh,
he already exited out. We'll get him on again. We'll have to get him on.
Wow.
Too.
Jeez.
The first time we've gotten somebody new on, we forgot to ask him.
I know. I just thought as soon as you said that, I was like, oh.
It's like I feel like
whoopsies.
I said have a good night, and I'm like, I think I'm forgetting something. That's the first time we've ever forgotten that question. I feel like it's been 5 years since we've had somebody new on the show.
I'm going to blame Joe LaBarbera because he actually popped in and asked some questions tonight. So it's all Joe's fault.
It's always Joe's fault. Calabasas Lacrosse eats props and lower units for breakfast.
So is he calling props and lower units Wheaties? That is the question.
Yes, I imagine that is what it's getting at.
Wheaties. The boat Wheaties for the lake.
Yeah. Well, dude, that was a fun show. I really want to get Josh back on here because I think there's a lot of other topics that we can really dive into with him. But, dude, I got to get to bed here because tomorrow I'm flying out for 3 days to Lanier. And then as soon as I get home, I'm going to fly home, and I'm going to get home at midnight. My flight lands at 12:05 Friday night, so technically Saturday. And then I'm driving home. I packed up the truck today, but throwing the kayak in the back, running to go fish a tournament out on Oneida Saturday, and then I'm going to be on Champlain Sunday till next Saturday. So it's going to be interesting. But we're going to try to do podcast next week. I'm going to try to do them from the hotel.
You should get Joey Webster on next week. We should do that. Is he going to be up there with you?
No, we'll have Hunter. We'll have Hunter, Keith Poche, who we need to do a show with soon. He said he'd do one. We'll have Adrian Avina. We got to get Adrian on too. Adrian's a good dude. We'll have Alex Redwine, which we've had Alex on before. And then we have Justin Atkins. Justin Atkins will be up there with us.
Oh, nice.
So we'll have a good crew. It'd be a fun crew. I should just corner them all into doing a show at the same time.
Yeah, that would be cool. And just talk about Champlain.
We might have a poker night. We could turn it into a podcast.
A podcast poker night?
Yeah. We'll force Brad Rutherford and all the Pure Fishing crew to be involved too. We'll take questions.
That'd be like a 12 panel.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Now we'll have to set something up soon with all those guys, and we'll get shows figured out for you guys for next week. But for this Friday show, we have a Topwater episode that Andy and I actually filmed We're going to talk everything hard bait, treble hook, topwater. So we're not going to talk frogs or buzz baits. We're going to have separate shows going into those, but just straight up treble hook, topwaters. And that's what we talked about for probably almost an hour. You know, where we throw them, why we throw them over other stuff, colors, you know, treble hooks that we swap out to, setups, the whole shebang. So look forward to that on Friday. That'll be obviously on the MP3, but also on the YouTube if you guys want to watch and like see the stuff we're going through. But if you are listening on MP3, we do appreciate if you could leave us a rating and review, especially if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Highly appreciate it. Andy, anything for the folks need to know before we tune out here tonight?
My boat's possibly for sale. So if anybody wants to buy
my boat,
I'll just throw it out there. Not a done deal yet, but we've got some things in the works on that end where might
can
be a
you
new
speak
boat
to
coming.
it?
Can
you tell folks what it might be?
I don't know if I want to, because if it
Please
doesn't
surprise.
come, like if it doesn't happen, then I kind of feel like a jerk because I'm like, oh, I'm buying this boat, but just kidding, I'm not buying it. I don't want to be that guy. It's that's why it's not like listed for sale. It's like kind of for sale, just kind of gauging the market to see what.
There's been some fun marinas that have been telling you, yeah, we'll get you this sick deal, and it's, by the way, there is no sick deal.
It's like, oh, I'm gonna pay $20,000 more than a good deal. Like, yeah, see ya. It's the used and new boat market right now is absolutely atrocious. Like, new boat prices every 3 months seem to be going up 125 to 175%, and the used boat market is essentially following. Like, you can't
Like used
find
trucks.
like you can't find, like, if I wanted to go out and buy a used boat right now, a 2012 Nitro Z9, I'm going to pay almost $40,000 for it loaded, which is absurd. That boat brand new in 2012 was $40,000. Like, it's insane. And then Real Hook Set Outdoors here says it better come with smallmouth tackle. I'll throw this out there. If somebody on here buys my boat, I will just give them a guide trip in my next boat. Like, that's where I'm getting at with this. All right. Like,
and a pack of flatworms.
Yes, and a pack of flatworms. There we go. Because there's only like 700 of them in my basement right now.
Right.
Oh man, yeah.
So real quick, folks, for guys that are still tuning in, one, we appreciate you, but two, make sure you guys go follow Josh Stracner on Instagram. His social media is linked below. Go help him out, grow his social media, because we all know how important that is to the pros and their lifestyle. And because we all know the business side is almost more important than actually catching fish these days, it seems. That also being said, talking about business here, if you have not seen, we recently have partnered with X2 Power. They are now powering the podcast. They're our title sponsor. And if you guys want to save $40 on an AGM or lithium battery, you can use code SERIOUS40 at x2power.com. That's all linked down below. If you guys want to save money on a premium battery, powering option, it's obviously saving money on that stuff is huge. So
just a side note to tell you how good these batteries really are. I've been running them since basically like the beginning of April. I think I put them in my boat mid-April, and I sit on spot lock in 3-foot waves like 2 weeks ago for about 7.5 hours straight. And I don't have the biggest 3-bank charger in my boat, and they charged in about 3.5 hours because they were only drawn down about 25% on my Ghost. Like, they are incredible. My last batteries that I had in there were also AGMs, but 27 bank, and they would take about 9 to 10 hours for them to charge. So like, if I got my boat on the charger late, there was a chance that they wouldn't be fully charged the next day. So that is the honest opinion and truth about them. They are incredible. You'll never have battery issues again. And if you do, we'll figure it out. It's probably not the battery.
That's what's pretty cool. Really quick. I mean, we're not trying to do straight up sponsor plugs right now, but if you for some reason have issues with your battery, I have never met a better team that like gets it replaced like that. Basically, no questions asked. But the warranty is amazing on it. You guys will not regret it. Use that code if it's going to help you out, especially if you're in the market for new batteries. But yeah, We have a whole bunch of discount codes down below that can save you guys money on some badass products, some of the best in the industry. So if you guys want to go check them out, they're below in every show description, whether MP3 or YouTube. But Andy, I think that's going to do it for tonight. We'll see you folks.
Safe travels.
Thank you, buddy. We'll see you folks on Friday.